Before starting this video, I request you all to please like and subscribe as it really motivates me a lot. She remembered how Uncle Bob, a retired soldier, once said that torture was sometimes better than surgery. Back then, it made sense. Medicine was still in a strange place, somewhere between the old medieval ways and the beginning of the modern era. Painful surgeries that were hard to even talk about were common, and ideas like keeping things clean or using something to stop pain were just starting to be discovered. In the next scene, we see the Duke pull back the curtain. He asks her if she has showered, while holding a huge pair of scissors in his hand. Betty answers yes, but in her mind, she's thinking, I can't die like this. She notices many strange tools placed neatly on the table. She thinks, since he's a transcendent being, no matter what I do, it won't change anything. It would be foolish to rush into a plan with almost no chance of success. Now is not the time to panic. She thinks again, if I aim for his eye, I might buy a little time. But before she can do anything, the Duke catches her. The Duke asks again, and this time, Betty nervously says no. Trying to change the topic, she asks, look here, did I wash my hands well? The Duke looks at her and says, good job. You did well. Betty thinks, why is he smiling like that? When this man smiles, it always feels scary, like something bad is going to happen. Suddenly, he says, hold on. He holds her chin and tells her to look up for a moment and not to lower her head. She looks down and asks, like this? What's going on all of a sudden? Yes, he says. Look up, toward the ceiling. Then he asks, can you feel the pressure here? Betty replies, no. The Duke says, if this were normal, you'd feel a dull pain. But it's slowly getting worse because of the poison from that plant. Betty asks if he's lying and trying to scare her. She thinks that can't be true. There's nothing wrong with my vision. I can still see everything. The Duke calmly replies, that's because the optic nerve is still connected. But it's slowly breaking down. If nothing is done, you could go blind. Betty is shocked. The Duke adds, don't worry. Like I said before, I'll do the surgery myself. Betty, terrified, says, no. Then she starts listing the tools. You're going to use those scissors to cut and slice, and that skewer-like thing to make tiny holes on her voice shakes as she goes on. And with that hook, you'll pull out pieces bit by bit. And all of it for fun. Just because you're bored. And when you're tired of that, you'll stitch it back together with something sharp and then cut again with something else. The Duke, looking shocked, says, no, I wouldn't do that. What's going on in your head? I just said I'd open your head a little. That's all. So don't worry. Betty thinks, what is he saying? Does he really believe a 10-year-old girl like me could go through something that horrible? Shivering, she asks, do you really have to do this? The Duke replies, if we wait any longer, the other eye might go blind too. Betty argues, but it's not like I'm going to die. She thinks, I chewed a poisonous herb earlier, wanting to end my life. But now, when I think about it, I don't want to die. I don't want to leave Jody behind. She bursts into tears and cries, I don't want to do it. I don't want surgery. I hate surgery. She keeps crying. The Duke watches her quietly. He finally asks, do you really hate surgery? Betty says, yes, without a second thought. The Duke then asks, then are you going to run away again in the future? She quickly replies, no, I won't run away again. He pauses. What about punching me in the head? Betty answers, I'm really, really sorry. The Duke looks confused. Wait, what's this? Even the world tree seems touched by your honesty. Your left eye, it's back to normal. Look, Betty, your eyes are as beautiful as a fairy's. Betty says, wow. Then she suddenly frowns and asks, wait, were you lying? The Duke says, yes, I was lying. You looked so scared, I played a little trick. He smiles and asks, wasn't it funny? Betty stays silent, then says, yes. The Duke asks, then why aren't you laughing? Haha. Betty lets out an awkward laugh. I should have finished him off properly at the well, she thinks. The Duke gently wipes her tears and says, thanks to your clever master. Everything's going smoothly, right? Even though you tried to run away, do you know why I'm keeping you alive? He holds up a stone and then throws it toward her. Betty catches it and asks, "Talented?
Me?
Are you sure?" The stone begins to glow with a golden light. The Duke nods.
Yes.
You're not just talented, you're a special kind of person. A precious guide. Betty thinks a guide? A guide who can purify the powers of transcendent beings? They're extremely rare, and their salaries are huge. But the risk is also huge. Other than their purification ability, they're just normal humans. Their job is to stay beside transcendent people during dangerous times and help keep their powers under control. To become an official guide, one has to go through terrible training. It's very risky, but also extremely rewarding. Of course, someone like me, a commoner, couldn't even dream of it. Unless you're an S-rank guide, nobles won't even look at you. But if you are, they'll sponsor you themselves. The Duke says, "I'm going to the capital tomorrow for a full checkup. We leave in the morning. Be ready." Betty replies, "Yes," but in her mind, she thinks, "There's no way I'm an S-rank guide. I won't let myself get tied up with this Duke any more than I already am. Sure, I acted too recklessly, but can't I just live a quiet life? A simple life, like an extra character in someone else's story? This mastermind or whatever, that has nothing to do with me." Then she suddenly remembers. Today was the day of that incident. She thinks back to the coronation ceremony at the Imperial Palace. That was the day Duke Janus went on a wild rampage, all because of someone's plan. Then Lady Christine, the original villain and a powerful guide, stepped in and purified him. After that, she became his guide, and like a proper villain, she caused all sorts of trouble and eventually died in a ridiculous way, only for the real main character to take over her body and start a new story. That was the plot, she thinks. But the Duke Janus, was supposed to be at the palace today, attending the banquet. So, why is he still here? Then the next scene showed the Duke asking Betty what that was. Betty responded that it was luggage and that they had instructed her to pack it for a thorough inspection of the capital. He told her to allow him to see the luggage. She had asked, somewhat confused, "See it? Why do you need to inspect my luggage? Do you think I am smuggling poison or something?" she had thought. He had inspected it but then had abruptly thrown it aside and stated that he would purchase new items for her in the capital. He had asked whether it did not feel pleasant to lessen her burdens. Betty, nearly on the verge of tears, had thought to herself that her formal outfit was in there, and she had only worn it once in her entire life. He had told her to proceed with him and had gone near the vehicle to sit. A man had offered his hand to assist Betty in getting in. Betty had thought in awe that it was a limousine, something she had never seen before, not even in her previous lifetime. She had thought that the man assisting her was Gilbert, the footman, who frequently helped her in secret and, more importantly, was extraordinarily handsome. She had smiled and thanked him, albeit nervously, while the Duke had observed her. When she had sat inside the car, the Duke had asked if she liked that kind of man. He had remarked that it was a fortunate thing he had not killed Gilbert the previous night. Betty, showing an annoyed expression, had looked at him. The Duke had claimed that it had merely been a joke and had asked why she was not laughing. He had continued, explaining that no one had perished the previous night. He had only frightened them. He had said that he had instructed them to manage the estate more efficiently. She had thought if he was merely bored and looking for a reason to play his twisted hunting games. The Duke had told her that in the capital there were numerous men like Gilbert. Betty had replied that she did not know, as she had never been to the capital. The Duke had said that she would soon find out. Betty had thought that at this rate, it seemed like she would end up being financially supported by the Duke regardless of her rank after completing guide training. She had thought that she would end up trapped under his control. In truth, she had no desire to become involved with a lunatic who used firearms for amusement whenever he was bored. A 10-year-old boy from a side branch of the Janus family had entered the competition for heirship and had eliminated all his relatives, except himself, to inherit the title within merely 2 years. The Duke had needed an adult to control him, but by then, the child had already crossed the point of no return. She had thought that she probably could not fix a person like that. Her best plan, she had decided, was to avoid the Duke as much as she possibly could. She had asked the Duke if she truly had to go to the capital. The Duke had asked what she was talking about and had said that if she did not want to go, why had she entered the car? She had thought that it was because he had told her to get in. He had then asked if she knew how much a guide earned. It was significantly more than what she earned by washing dishes with her small hands. He had reminded her that he had promised to make her wealthy if she studied diligently. He had asked her whether she did not want to be rich. She had replied that she did want to. The Duke had asked why she was making that expression then. Betty had thought that it was not about wealth. She just did not want to do something dangerous like becoming a guide. She would rather succeed as a maid or something similar, just like other people. But she had believed that saying something like that might infuriate the Duke. She had said that the capital was enormous and filled with people. She had heard that the moment one lowered their guard, they were bound to be taken advantage of. The Duke had asked if that was what frightened her and had said that he had not known she was such a coward. But then he had asked why she had broken his head and run away. Betty had thought that from the Duke's perspective, she must have seemed fearless. But from her perspective, everything she had done was for her survival. The Duke had asked if she wanted to hold his hand. Betty, confused, had thought, did he think that holding hands would change anything? The Duke had said that if she, Betty, was frightened, could he not at least do that for her? Betty had replied with okay, and had thought that now that she was a little calmer, she could definitely feel something whenever she made physical contact with a transcendent like him. It had felt as if a gentle breeze were leaving her body. This, she had thought, must be what purification felt like. A transcendent such as the Duke of Janus probably could not be managed by just one or two guides. The male protagonist of the novel, Duke Glad, who also supported the Empire like Janus, had over 10 personal guides, all top-tier talents from prestigious families. Janus probably had guides of the same caliber from similar backgrounds. But for the past several days, she had not seen a single guide by his side. She had thought, what was going on? Then she had asked the Duke, after I graduate from the academy, will I become your personal guide? He had responded affirmatively, saying that since he was sending her to school free of charge, she should simply endure it for 10 years and graduate. After serving 1 year as his guide, her market value would increase exponentially. She had exclaimed, wow, and had asked about his current guides. He had stated that he did not have any. She had asked why not. He had said that all of them had died. He had gone berserk a few days ago. None of his guides had ever lasted more than 6 months. He did not know why. Betty had thought that a 100% death rate was absolute madness. She had thought, forget the capital. I just want to open the door and leap out of the car. Later, at the Duke's residence in the capital, Betty had opened a door and said, Duke, I am entering. I heard you summon me. He had asked why she was not wearing the garments he had provided for her. She had said that they were too extravagant to wear. In her mind, she had thought that she would sell them later. He had pointed this out and asked if she was planning to sell them later. Betty had turned pale, realizing her scheme had been exposed. The Duke had said that it would not happen and had ordered her to pick something to wear and change immediately. He had rung the bell to summon a maid. When the maid had entered, the Duke had instructed her to assist Betty in changing her clothing. The maid had acknowledged his order with, yes, understood. Betty had thought that the servants in the capital were significantly more disciplined. Among them, Lucy was a senior maid who served the Duke directly. Her dream, Betty had thought, was to become like Lucy, so graceful, so professional, so composed. She had followed her, continuing to admire her impressive skill in completing multiple tasks efficiently in a short span of time. The Duke had told her that she could leave now. Betty had thought that even though her foolish master did not remember Lucy's name, she never wavered. She was the perfect example of a maid. Betty had thought that she probably earned 50 gold coins annually without difficulty. The Duke says her, but this wasn't just about the clothes. I am thinking of submitting your school application soon. Betty asks what you have not applied, yet I thought you applied as soon as we got here. Duke says, what's the rush? They will feed and house guide you here until the guide exams anyway.
Or, do you not like that?
Betty replies, no, Duke, you are the best. Duke says, that's what I thought. Anyway, is your name really just Betty? If there is nothing else, I will submit it as it is. You will be called Betty until you graduate. Is it really just Betty? She says, well, my real name is Beatrice. Betty is just a nickname. She thinks the director gave it to me in just 3 seconds. Maybe it is the time for me to change it. The Duke asks Beatrice. Beatrice from Sinclair and Beatrice. Betty says, yes, is that not okay? Well, for context, Sinclair and Beatrice is just like Romeo and Juliet of this world. The Duke began to laugh so hard that his stomach began to hurt. Betty thinks, should I just throw myself back into the well? There is still much more left to the story. Further, we will see the hero fighting with villain for Betty. The Duke taking Betty back with him after she runs away. The Duke taking a stand for Betty against some annoying people, and the romantic scene between Duke and who is that? So please subscribe so I can post all of it.